You might wonder, why do we have breathing cities, Arctic future, on the agenda of the China Arctic Forum? Why do we find it necessary to talk about the energy system of Chinese and Asian cities when we talk about the future of the Arctic? Why is it that we want to showcase that it's possible to eliminate the coal-driven urban heating systems in China, which of course causes enormous pollutions and deaths and illness, within a framework of the largest Arctic conference ever to take place in China? And the reason is, in fact, very simple. The future of the Arctic is to a larger extent determined by the cities in Asia than it is by those of us who live in the Arctic. That is the fundamental truth. Because the fossil fuel energy system created by those of us in the Western world, in Europe and the United States, and then reaching into Asia during the 20th century, is the fastest and the most powerful cause of the melting of the Arctic sea ice and the melting of the Greenland ice sheet. We just listened here this morning to a fascinating, important presentation by a Chinese professor of how the aggressive melting of the Arctic sea ice causes extreme weather patterns and enormous destructions in Chinese cities, affecting over 100 million people 10 years ago in this country alone. 100 million people. That's more than the population of France or Germany. So why is the Arctic sea ice melting? One of the primary reasons is the fossil fuel-based energy system around the world, and especially, more importantly, in the 21st century, in that part of the world which harbors the largest part of the global population. Last year alone, 7 million people died from pollution in cities. It is the fourth largest killer on the planet. And like urban pollution causes death in these extraordinary numbers, it's also causing the melting of the Arctic sea ice, which then causes extreme weather patterns and destructions in Asia. It is a vicious circle, which we have not really talked very much about in the Arctic. Because we have, like most Arctic people, been kind of preoccupied with our own Arctic neighborhood, with our Arctic communities, with our Arctic cooperation. It's only recently that we have started to discover what happens to the energy system in other continents, in Africa and Asia, in Europe and America, of course, has tremendous effect on the future of the Arctic. And as was pointed out also here this morning by the Icelandic Minister of Science, who opened the discussion, with the aggressive melting of the Greenland ice sheet, the sea level rise all over the world, including in the Chinese Sea, including in the ocean waters here in Shanghai, will rise about 2 meters. Shanghai, as we know it, will then cease to exist. So this vicious circle, urban energy heating systems based on fossil fuel, primarily in Asia, but also in other parts of the world, causing the melting of the Greenland ice sheet and the Arctic sea ice, which then leads to the rising sea levels, making Chinese and Asian cities in Japan and Korea no longer livable, is one of the most dangerous and threatening vicious circles that humankind faces. in the 21st and the 22nd century. And if you think the 22nd century is a long time away, and many people think that, and that's why they don't really do anything. I'm always reminded of what the Chinese President Jiang Zemin, which was the first Chinese president I was privileged to work with more than 16 years ago, said to me in our first meeting. He said, "The problem with you in the West is that you don't realize that for us in China, 50 years is not a long time." Very profound statement. And it is less than 2 times 50 years until we are in the 22nd century. So that is why in the China Arctic Circle Forum, we found it not only proper, but absolutely essential to bring here this morning this session on green energy transformation and breathing cities. And we are privileged to have some of the leading people who are and have been executing this transformation in China, as well one of the leading thinkers of responsible, sustainable architecture in the world. I'm especially pleased to have my good friend Bill McDonald here with us this morning. He was recently appointed by Fortune magazine as one of the 50 world leaders, most important today. Why is he important? Why is he in that category? Because he was a pioneer when nobody was really paying attention of how we build cities will be the fundamental cause of whether we live in a sustainable, secure world or whether we face disaster in the future. The cities in China and Asia are the key to the future of the Arctic. That is why we decided for the first time in any Arctic gathering to have a session on breathing cities. And I hope as we go forward from the China Forum, there will always be a dialogue and discussion at any Arctic gathering on how we build cities all around the world and how that is related to the future of the Arctic. Thank you.